All right, we're going to head into essay for the public audience now, and we're going to get another bit of a warm-up. Now, this will just be a shorter one. I want you guys to be thinking nice and quickly and on your feet for this one. We'll take about 2 minutes to do so. Okay. So every piece of media that we consume in the world today has some sort of underlying message, something that they want the audience to come to understand. So it could be the front page story of the New York Times to the TikTok that you just scrolled past. All of those have something that they want the audience to understand. So I want you to consider your favorite show, your favorite movie, your favorite book, your favorite piece of media, or perhaps the last piece of media that you consumed. And I want you to be able to identify what is its underlying message. What does it want you to think or feel? 2 minutes begins now. Jot down what that underlying message is. What's the moral of that story? What emotion does it want to provoke within you? All right, about 30 seconds left. Keep jotting it down. If you've got some dot points, then perhaps try and turn it into your sentence form, what that underlying message is. Okay. So, what is the underlying message of that most recent piece of media or your favorite piece of media? Now, if you've written it out in sentence form, know that that can act as your thesis in this particular task. So, something to consider when you're approaching this task. So, the essay for the public audience, sometimes known as the journalism task or the article task, is probably the most unfamiliar task you're going to be encountering this year, even if you've done it last year or the year before as well. It's the most sort of bizarre, if I'm honest. It takes elements from all other types of assessments and combines them together. It has persuasive elements, it has creative elements, it has analytical elements in there as well. It includes memes, media elements, captions, puns, analysis, a text that you might not love or are too familiar with, movie analysis. It combines them all together in a bit of a monster task, a 1,500 word task. So it can definitely be a little bit intimidating to approach. So if we just simplify it here for a moment, let's just break it down to its most basic elements, its structure. It's going to look a little something like this. So you have your introduction section, which includes, like a persuasive essay, a bit of a hook. So it's just introducing the key topic or theme you're going to be talking about within the essay or the article, and you're linking it to a current event that's happening in the world around us. Then you go ahead and introduce the text you're going to be analyzing side by side. Then you'll have your thesis statement, the argument you're going to be building on and proving throughout the course of the article, and then you're going to be previewing your points. Within each body paragraph, you might have 2 or 3. You'll have your topic sentence, your analysis, the unpacking of one or both of the texts, and then your exposition, which is linking your findings or the key themes that you talk about in that paragraph to a broader 21st century issue. And then within your conclusion, you're recapping all of your points and having a broad final concluding statement about the key themes that you have talked about throughout your piece. Now, when it comes to the essay for the public audience, the most common mistake that I see in students that I've worked with is writing too formally, not matching or finding the correct tone that you're asked to achieve within this piece. So my biggest tip for this is to approach the writing style of this piece as if you're having a conversation with a very cool teacher. They're familiar with the text, they understand aesthetic features and structural devices, film analysis, all of those things. They're very familiar with them. You can make puns, you can quote popular culture, use contractions, incomplete sentences, all of those sorts of things. You are at ease talking to this person. Now, it's not as informal as it would be if you're talking to your friends at lunchtime. This is still someone you look up to, still someone you respect, but you are making this piece approachable. Essentially, the tone of this piece is trying to simulate what it might be like to write an article for a random member of the public, someone who's not interested in reading really heavy, really academic, really formal writing like an analytical essay. An article that they might click on, they see on Facebook or something like that. So an example of this tone might be, while we might describe our Western culture today as enlightened and progressive, are we really better than the history that has always chained women to convention? Now, in an analytical piece, in an academic or formal piece of writing, we would never use the collective we would never use a rhetorical question, we would never use quotation marks to emphasize a particular word. Those are just techniques you wouldn't see in a traditional analytical piece, but they are completely at home within this piece. Now, a few basic tips as you're approaching this task. Definitely, we want to keep this nice and broad because your schools and your teachers are going to approach them a little bit differently, but I found generally these tips fit for most students. So approach analysis as you usually would. The purpose of this piece is still to argue a specific thesis, a specific point, throughout your piece. So there's no need to come up with a whole new formula for analyzing. You're still looking for literary techniques, film devices, certain elements of poetry or plays that provide deeper meaning, and you go from there, you explain from there. Now, when you first start writing, you might have to get used to this new tone. It might be something that you're not altogether comfortable with. So if you give yourself enough time to draft and redraft, then you can write for starters in a more academic tone. And then as you're editing, you can casualize it a little bit more, find a more casual, more conversational tone as you go. Analytical needs to be consistent throughout. So make sure that you're endeavoring to continue to argue your thesis throughout your whole piece. Really, really important. Now, the idea of putting media content and memes or something similar in an essay that your teacher is going to read can definitely be a little bit more intimidating or a little bit more undesirable than perhaps some other types of assessments. But it's a really easy way to make your essay appear more approachable and more like it's been written for a general average person in the public. So if you do so, if you think carefully about what different media elements you might include in your piece, including formatting and pull quotes and font choices and all of those sorts of things, it can be an easy way to make your writing appear more approachable. So you don't have to worry as much about really nailing that a bit ambiguous tone, really. So it doesn't just have to be memes. You can find artwork, you can find screenshots if you're analyzing a film. You can use book covers, even your own Photoshop creation. I really want to encourage you guys to be creative, think outside the box, and have some fun with it, because it can make doing an otherwise perhaps banal type of assessment a little bit more interesting. Now, at the end of each of your paragraphs, at the end of each of your points, you need to have what I call exposition, which is essentially linking the theme you're talking about in your paragraph to a broader 21st century issue. Now, it's important that your connection is based on the key theme of your essay, not the really specific point you're making within your paragraph. If you're discussing racism, talk about some broad ideas or events or figures in the public eye that are linked to that. If you're talking about gender, the same deal. You can always link your essay to specific individuals as well. So in my year 12 example of this task, I talked about Taylor Swift. I also talked about Malala. So you can talk about public figures as well. If the public figure is alive today or their stories occurred in the last 5 to 10 years, you're generally good to go. But I know for a fact that some teachers and schools would like you to keep it even more recent, even more relevant than that. So definitely be keeping an eye on those specific requirements from your teacher, be reading your task sheets really carefully, and just be aware of those different details because you don't want to be marked down for something like that. So you might have to be writing about something that's occurred in the last 6 months or something like that. All right, something that you might be a little bit more unfamiliar with is analyzing movies. You might be more familiar with analyzing a written text rather than a visual one. We don't have all the time to go into the world of film analysis. There is so much richness in there, but there are actually so many incredible free resources on YouTube that you can talk about film techniques within. And the key phrase I'm going to leave you with, which you can use to look up some really excellent resources, is mise en scène. So it's a French term and it literally means staging. And it really refers to everything that you see on screen: lighting, props, costume, acting choices. I said props already, but I'll say it again because props are a part of it. Framing, all of those different elements are included within mise en scène, and it's a really easy, accessible introduction to film analysis. So go ahead, have a little bit of explore of that on YouTube. It will definitely be a great resource to show you some specific examples from different films as well, and how they're used to produce certain emotional responses in audience members. So have some fun with that. Now, we've reached the end of our second topic and we've done about an hour of our session so far. I hope you guys are doing well. It's definitely a bit of a marathon. I want to take an opportunity to have a little bit of a longer break. We're going to take about a 7-minute break here to get us ready to get into the next big section of our session today. So you can use this little bit of a break time for 2 different approaches. Either you could be asking some bigger or perhaps more complicated questions down in the Q&A below, or if you would like to stay warmed up, perhaps have a bit more of a fun, laid-back activity, then have a think back to that underlying message you came up with from earlier. And now is your chance to take it to the next level and be thinking about how you might incorporate it in the specific tone of a public audience essay. So make a meme, create a meme that captures an element of that underlying message. So a very classic one over there on the right, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, do not blow this for us. Incredible, iconic scene from early Brooklyn Nine-Nine days. So have a little bit of fun with that. You can create as many as you like. There are plenty of really easy, accessible, free meme generating websites online, even on your phone as well. But you can also take this opportunity to be asking questions. So I'll go ahead and start our 7-minute timer. And then once there's a minute to go, I'll bring you guys back, get you ready, and we'll head into the second section of our session today.